Well, good evening, everybody in the, the ether out there. Uh, Hope everybody's having a good night. Uh, how y'all doing? How's it going, Matt?
It's going here in the People's Republic of New Jersey. Another New Jersey winter underway. Just passing my time through. How you all doing?
Yep.
Over
And
here on the other side
Admiral
of the
T, what's
river,
up?
it's equally cold. Oh, I've got the same lovely weather as Canal Unbearable 73. It's like a frosty 19 or 20 degrees here. It's absolutely horrible out. And I have a kicking case of COVID. Hi, everybody.
You brought the coof to the party, my friend.
Yeah, that's right. Guys, you might want to sanitize your computer keyboards. I understand that viruses are transmissible via computer as well. So careful.
Yes.
Yeah, we should have masks on to prevent the virus from getting through our microphones.
That's okay. I put a mask and a condom over mine.
Oh, good. Okay, we're safe.
Okay. We're good. So I'm glad you can hear, even though you're a little under the weather. Glad you're. Zaxx won't be joining us. He's got a little case of strep throat. So
Strep.
yikes.
Oh, I've got
Been going
COVID.
around
Come
a lot.
on. Zaxx, man. You got to be a little badass. You know? Come on. Actually, if you can't talk, I hope you get well soon, buddy. That sucks. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the Pacific. Yeah, I wanted to do the Band of Brothers and Pacific, just talk about them because of the Masters of the Air comes out the 26th, I think. I wanted to.
Is there still only that first trailer? Have we gotten a new trailer on that one?
I've only seen the first trailer on that.
It was pretty exciting.
Hopefully,
it had me ready for that show.
Hopefully, it'll be good like the others.
I guess the 10th Air Force movie's never happening, huh? We've seen so many little clips in the last 5 years, but it's just been too long.
The worrisome thing about Masters of Air is it's on Apple TV, and I hope they don't try to wokeify it.
Yeah, hopefully.
I don't know how you wokeify a story about men in the air. The only angle there that's in the least bit woke is like some of the men were also black. I mean, what else can you say?
You put
by the middle of the war, America,
you follow the formula.
That's when Eleanor Roosevelt got behind the yoke of her P-51 Mustang and dropped an atomic bomb right on Nagasaki, winning the war.
Yeah.
One fell swoop.
They'll put one woman in there and they'll make all the Jews gay. That's what they'll do.
It's like Eisenhower will be crying on the phone and his wife will be like looking at a map of Europe. It's like, you should maybe attack like from the bottom of Italy up. How about that? And he's like,
okay, thank you, dear. Without you, I couldn't do this.
Oh, God. And she's like reading
his wife will be
president.
His wife will be played by Jennifer Lawrence.
I was waiting for that one. I love that.
Everything.
That's right. Someone was talking about some movie star from like the 1930s, and they're like, and his first wife was it escapes him, like his first wife was Jennifer Lawrence, of course.
Yeah.
Everyone's first wife was Jennifer Lawrence. My first wife was Jennifer Lawrence.
Everyone's mother was Jennifer Lawrence, bro. She is the mother of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. East of Eden was Jennifer Lawrence. After creation, waiting for the first humans.
Yeah.
And Churchill's wife will be like, that's not how you light a cigar, Winston. This is how you do it.
I would say this: the Churchill movie with Gary Oldman is a much better movie about Dunkirk than the movie called Dunkirk by Christopher Nolan, which is the worst movie I've seen.
Yeah, there's an older Dunkirk movie which is better than Nolan's Dunkirk. Nolan's Dunkirk was like he drew it's you have it on this team. But one of my rants I go on all the time on Jacob's show is, and it seems like every decade we get on further, they make these movies, even the good ones, excessively long and excessively plotty, right? So. Like if you go back, I brought up, we were talking about like The Mummy from 1931, how the movie was an hour and it's just as good as a 2-hour great film today, but they cut all the extra crap out of it, right?
Yeah.
So
I
it
think
seems
they're
like
technically limited too, right?
well,
It was
maybe
like
the point I'm
every
getting at
few
is,
minutes someone had to change a reel.
what's your favorite movie of the last 10 years?
I think I made it on my phone in a rather dark room the other. Last 10 years.
Or a really good
I
one. Like,
don't.
doesn't have to be the favorite. Any really good one.
In the last 10 years. Well, it's not from Star Wars or Star Trek.
Did you like Fury Road?
I really liked Fury Road. I
Here we
own
go.
Fury Road.
You could have cut 20 minutes out of Fury Road and it would have been just as good.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. It's long though. It's hard to say.
That's the point I'm getting at. Like, I'm not saying I love the movie. It's one of the best movies of the past 10 years. And you could have cut 10 minutes out of it or 20, somewhere in there, some extra scenes and things like that. You know, they drag certain things out. Like, just think this way, the amount of time he spent on that car bleeding into the other guy, they could have cut 2 minutes of that out and still have the same message, right? So the point I'm getting at is, like Dunkirk, the biggest problem with Nolan film in general is they're very like there's way too much of the film in the film. You know, like they're just so
Not to mention,
Yeah.
you sound cool when you say something like this, but then you have to deliver. I'm going to make a war movie with no gunfire without ever showing the enemy. And boy, did that not work out. He pulled it off.
Yeah.
It's not a good story, though.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't even make any connections with any of the people in it, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, oh, there's that movie.
I didn't know who they were until
Yeah.
Scarecrow killed somebody for no real reason, and they decided that's kind of okay. Hey, Melvin, it's good to see you, buddy.
Yeah.
What's up, Mel?
So just getting back to the Pacific, the one thing to note for the people who haven't seen it, it is a slightly different narrative structure than Band of Brothers. Like Band of Brothers follows the Easy Company, the guys in the Easy Company. This follows, is it 3 or 4 particular Marines spread out throughout the campaign in the Pacific, the Guadalcanal campaign, I should say.
I think it's one fire group, right? One squad, 7 guys.
No, they're not in the same squad. They're all different divisions. Because I know that because otherwise the other 2 guys survived and Basiloni did not, and because Basiloni's division was almost wiped out to the last man several times. You know.
This movie is a little more brutal than Band of Brothers and a little more thoughtful. In Band of Brothers, when we had a big action scene, you're like, all right, we just beat the big bad Yahtzees. They're jerks. Let's move on. In this movie, in this series, after we have our conflict, it's like, all right, we got rid of these horrible Imperial Japanese, oppressors, but wow, look what it did to our guys. Look how messed up they are from this. It's like they won, but they like emotionally they look like they lost. And by the middle of the series, it's starting to feel like a Vietnam movie because their uniforms are just absolutely filthy, and they've become far more brutal than the guys in Band of Brothers are shown. The guys in Band of Brothers are given a nice thick coat of gloss and deified, whereas these guys, it's like we kind of see more of a real war. They're seeing people getting deleted by the enemy left and right with underhanded traps. And it was only after I saw this that I realized why all the war footage of Japanese soldiers surrendering, they're naked. They had to make them strip because they were all, booby trapping themselves.
Yeah.
They're ahead of their game with that one.
Yeah.
With the self-deletion bombers, as we call them.
Yeah. So, and this, obviously, this is a big series for the Italian community because of John Basiloni. He's an Italian American icon. So he's one of those is he the most decorated Marine of the war of all time? I'm trying to remember.
It's hard to believe it'd be all time because it was a lot easier to get medals. It was a lot easier to get medals in like the Civil War. They're giving them out left and right because they just invented them.
Yeah.
For a long time, the only medal we had at all was the Purple Heart.
Yeah, a lot. Several of my uncles who fought in the war, a couple of them who actually knew him, were like the only reason you get nominated for, I guess, the second Medal of Honor or whatever it would be called, because it's technically not another Medal of Honor. It's like a sequel or something like that. Was because he died in that battle,
they were all in 1st Marines, but they were in different regiments. So the 1st, 5th, and 7th regiments of the 1st Marines.
What's our guys' connection? They're friends from before the war, or they become mates, brothers in arms. It's been a while since I've seen this one.
Yeah, it's been a while for me as well. I remember scenes of it. You know what I mean, but not like. And I remember the overall structure of it, but
It's a very
I don't remember.
powerful opening. They
Yeah,
had ferment. What
Yeah.
they did was they took the Band of Brothers formula and they sort of like intensified it, and we got, for lack of a better term, Band of Brothers crack with this. It comes out about 2 years later when the Band of Brothers DVD set's selling really well because everyone kind of wanted it. And with the Pacific, people had done more reflecting on the war, and we fought two wars. There was not a lot of overlap between how those two wars were fought. If you were particularly brutal in Europe, Eisenhower would send you to the Pacific Theater and give you to MacArthur, who he personally despised. Uh, the firebombing of Dresden made him so upset that he transferred the entire Air Force command or Air Corps command for his region, like the top planning guys. He was like, "You can go do that in the Pacific. I don't want that here. We already won this war. We didn't need to do this." On the other hand, in the Pacific, MacArthur and his Navy equivalent Chester Nimitz are doing that island hopping campaign and sort of straining the Japanese of their resources and their ability to make war, which breaks down across the series. And we do see one of the more powerful openings where they make it very austere. We see pretty much what we see here, but it's more up in close and focus. We see an old school pencil that is just flaking apart really badly as it's just being drawn across a map of the Pacific, and it's almost all water. And every once in a while, we'll hit an island, and it'll be like Tinian or something like that, and then we'll turn and keep going. And it's all recognizable places like Iwo Jima and Tarawa. And
yeah,
as the movie goes on, the Japanese become increasingly brutal. But this movie portrays them as being very, very brutal right away. In the first encounter, the Americans are trying to go a little easy on the wounded and the prisoners, and they're getting the worst for it, and then they're like, there won't be any more prisoners for a while.
yeah. I want to say this very carefully, so because it could be misinterpreted. Part of Japanese this brutality of the prisoners is part of Japanese military culture for centuries, which is not to say that Europeans didn't have the same thing going on, but I want to
In
say
Europe, it went just as bad when they went fascist too. That's the best way to put it. These
I'm
people
talking.
had corrupted
I'm
their
talking
original
before.
ideas.
I'm talking
Well,
before the 20th century. Like you'll
right,
find
but
examples of militaries in the 13th, 14th century in Europe doing the same thing they did in like 16th century Japan, boiling prisoners and things like that. But it's like European militaries kind of got over it faster or more we they started getting over it maybe in the late 1800s, whereas the Japanese didn't
a
until
little earlier, yeah.
we conquered them like in World War II.
Right. The thing we should say is like, in a world of vacuum tubes and radios and mass culture and instant communication where everyone loved Batman and Superman, that's what these people were seeing at the movies, that
Yeah.
familiar, relatable things. Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, these things are going on while this is a time of mass culture. The country can communicate and know the same thing all at once.
Well,
It's changing the world and the way we fight.
Yeah, all of our ancestors were pretty brutal, pieces of what. And
Well, as they say, the arc of history is long, but bends towards justice, right? People are more compassionate now than they were, say, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So this is a briefing. If I catch it right, you'll see the three main characters in the front row. That's kind of why I went back to this point. They don't share a lot of screen time together after this, if I recall correctly.
And let's be honest here, this is not...
These are guys that are already in the Marine Corps. They've been in other things.
Yep.
But these three are like, I think they're the first regiment of the 1st Division, I think.
Yeah,
and these three stay together. These three stay together.
Yeah, John Basilone was actually in the Army in the 30s and decorated from there, and then wanted to get back into the war faster, so that's why he switched to the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
That's like, as crazy as, did you know that the Arizona Diamondbacks once had Randy Johnson? You know, it's like, what?
So this is like a typical kind of, almost an Italian American home feast type of thing. Now, that's one of my pet peeves, by the way. I'll get out of the way first, okay? So I am not one of the people who will say you have to be of the proper ethnicity to play every character, right? I don't believe that, right? I'm not woke or whatever. But if you're picking a particularly historically significant character from the Italian Americans, he should be played by an Italian American actor, right? Like the other Italian guys can be played by any other you want that looks similar, but like historically significant characters, you should try to get someone of that matching ethnicity, just to be respectful to the culture they came from. That's so because and John Kita is not Italian.
Here's the thing, though. This guy's an Italian American, so whatever else Sakita is, he's half of what.
Go back there a minute.
Leon is,
Here?
He fought under. We just have to underscore this one. That character is particularly
shaking his heart.
interesting.
Oh, that's somewhere in here.
This character starts smoking heavily and becomes a brutal killer.
Yeah.
I know the scene you want. I'm trying to find it. There it is.
Well, it's the one with the mother and father that kind of look at each other.
Yeah,
I kind of got the impression that they were making up the whole heart murmur thing.
It's probably true. It's probably true. But if any war, they were going to just be like, yeah, you know what? We missed that one. You can go and be in the army. It was going to be this one.
It was really like early on that was true. Because my relatives went in at all different times. And my grandpa and his oldest brother volunteered before the war even began. In fact, they volunteered so far before the war began that they had almost finished their required service time before the war started, and they decided to renew because of the war, right? So they could stay where they were because they felt they had gained promotions and didn't want to start over where they might randomly be drafted. You know what I mean? But and I remember some of them saying that some of their relatives early on, like they would take anyone, but as I guess the stresses of battle would make people with heart conditions die on training and whatever, they started to realize we got to be a little more selective with the healthcare, with the health of the recruits, So like it was a really interesting sort of over time. Like that was a big thing about World War II, by the way. So like World War I was the transition from to industrial warfare, right? World War II was the transition in the U.S., for the U.S. especially, to going from sort of like, ad hoc, sort of like random drafting to a professional military, with certified training, certified trainers, or organization from the beginning and all that sort of stuff,
We'd figured it out in World War I, how to have a standing army and how to train for war. We didn't really have the biggest or best army up until World War II. Really, it's only since World War II that we've kept force at pretty big strength, that we've used our military pretty robustly, and that we've had the largest and most powerful military in the entire world and absolute military hegemony over this planet for decades now, and that's something that these people did not yet have. We had won one big freaking war. We'd been in one World Series. All right. Went 7 games and we somehow won.
Although by this time, the U.S. Navy had taken over worldwide anti-piracy from the British. So we were dominating in that regard before even World War II. So this
salty traveling sea has an interesting point. I think they were afraid to go too grim. But by the middle, they seem to have shrugged off the idea not to, because it's the final episode is grim.
Oh,
when they're talking about like life and death, and maybe you shouldn't go out there and take stuff off the bodies in the battlefield. And he's like, well, why not? And he's like, you got to sleep. Like these guys, they go into
this particular vehicle here. If you remember the D-Day invasions in both Band of Brothers and in Saving Private Ryan, and you see the lander here. There was some study that was done, I want to say, as a result of World War II, right? That the amount of soldiers who were lost going in on beaches because these things opened to the front, right, and had
Yeah.
no protective armor over the top. So basically, if any little, even a little artillery or if machine gun fire got into these metal boxes from the top, it would just ricochet, and there were shooting galleries once they opened. So there was a lot of thought afterwards to redesigning these landing vehicles to be much more protective of the soldiers getting off. That like I don't remember. I'm not up on the.
We
I mean,
have
you,
like
you go from
hovercrafts now. We have a
you go
hovering
from
tank that
something
kind of
like this
goes right
to,
in there.
I mean, it shows it later on in this series that they have actual machine guns on the landing craft, and
Yeah,
there's
But
better
there's two
protection.
kinds of landing craft. These appear to be what we called Higgins boats, and we see them in Saving Private Ryan. The other type of landing craft, I believe, are called alligators, maybe, or crocodiles, one or the other. But they're the ones that had the tracks with the blades in them, and they could move through water, and they could. This is the important part: get across really shallow water and a coral reef. The invasion of Tarawa gets hung up on a coral reef, and only certain landing craft can reach the beach, and they start having to go and pull people off these stranded Higgins boats.
Yeah.
So we have got a couple of different levels of technology. Well, by the end of the war, they had just a really, really huge, gigantic Higgins boats that they were designing for the If you look at some of the stuff they were designing for the final invasion of the Japanese mainland, where we were expecting to fight for about 10 years, like this was going to take
Well,
forever.
Look at the plan for it's called Operation Downfall to take Japan without nukes. They had just Allied casualties, not counting the Japanese side of it, right? They were estimating 10 million casualties. They made
I heard
so
it was
many.
I heard it was 1 million, right? Because what's our total loss in World War II? Isn't it it's about 300 to 500 million?
They
Thousand?
made
Sorry, 300
enough.
to 500,000?
They made enough body bags that for the Operation Downfall, they didn't run out of them until I think the early 1990s or late 1980s. They made enough Purple Hearts. I think they were still using them to almost the end of the century. That's how many casualties they planned for in Operation Downfall. It's a fascinating read if you read through the plans for it, like how much they expected the Japanese to resist to the point. Or to give another example, so we used the two nuclear bombs on Japan, right? Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So in the run up to the Hiroshima bombing, they dropped leaflets on it. It was either 5 or 10 cities in the days ahead of it saying, "Evacuate this city. We are going to obliterate it." I'm paraphrasing, right? So the Japanese people tried to evacuate, and the military government said, "No, if you leave, we'll execute you." Right? So they dropped the Hiroshima bomb, and without even contemplating it, the government said, "We're not going to surrender no matter what." So then they go to Nagasaki, and they do the same thing. They several of the cities get leaflets. I think it's 5 days or a week ahead of time, and the government says, "If you leave any of these cities, we're going to execute everyone who leaves." Right? And they wouldn't surrender. They dropped the Nagasaki bomb, and they still were not going to surrender until the Japanese emperor intervened, and that broke their coalition. You know, that's how resolute they were with this war.
Spoiler alert: we win the war. So,
Yeah. So this guy here,
I guess since we got to this point, let me just say this very quickly. It's my belief that if he had not dropped the bombs, Truman would have been impeached and then jailed. And just to get specific, in World War II, the Marine Corps mostly fought in the Pacific. They're still on ships in the Navy in the Atlantic, but it's limited. But the Marine Corps took 100,000 casualties, 24,511 killed. Total U.S. casualties are just well under 500,000. It's 407,000. But wounded 671,000. So 1 million people are casualties from our side, just the Americans.
Well,
so
just to follow
pretty bad, pretty appalling.
So follow what Salty said there and what I was saying. So as bad as we thought it would be with Operation Downfall, that was just our invasion. The Chinese would have murdered every Japanese person they came across just to clear the island. That's how brutal they were. The Japanese were the Chinese that invited that response. And the Soviets would have done the same thing. So one of our goals was to conquer Japan before they got there, so we wouldn't have to deal with any of that, This guy on the screen, he played Private Leckel. His name is James Badge Dale. He's made a couple other good things. If anyone wants to check out a movie he did a couple years ago called Spectral, I wish they had made a sequel to it. It's a really good sort of sci-fi war type film. Anyway, I just want to bring that up there. Let's keep going.
And I guess it's worth noting we're overriding and overlapping with like a lot of key historical events and other war movies.
There you go.
This is our first engagement. This is, I believe, going back to Bataan and Guadalcanal to attempt to re-liberate that island. And of course, there's a large prisoner camp on the island that we wanted those guys back. So this invasion is our first strike back. So anyone who had been out there was either hard pressed or captured by now. And these are the first Americans they're going back. So we're retaking the Philippines. What's Bataan? Whichever island that Chan is on. But we're going back to areas that have been disputed. The Japanese co-prosperity sphere they wanted extended out beyond the Philippines, and it was pretty huge. Their war plan was audacious, and their war goals were huge. They wanted about 1/3 of the globe. And we spend the whole war kind of wondering if the Russians are ever going to jump in. And they do, 10 days before it ends.
I'll get the next file, Jacob.
Right.
So, what did I say? I had an interesting thought. So you'll see one of the things soldiers deal with, by the way, there's a term, I have to curse to express this, but it's soldier term, Jacob, REMF, rear echelon mother fracker, and this, one of the things you'll see if you watch this, they do hint at it a little bit, is that there are rear echelon mother frackers, REMFs, who, when they go to the front, don't understand why the soldiers are dirty and wearing messed up uniforms and all that sort of stuff. You kind of see some of that being shown here in this one, and like one of the, so this is one of the better, more realistic examples of them doing that. You know what I mean?
So there's that really cool opening I was talking about where we drag the pencil across the map and really show that we've got a lot of open ocean and then key strategic points and then Japan.
Yeah, I'm trying to not if I don't want to show that, but that might catch the algorithm's attention. You know what I mean? If I show the opening credits.
Right. There's this movie's. I'm sorry. This, I guess we could call it a movie. This series or movie hews close to reality, and it's pretty gritty. The events of the war kind of play out in their first engagement. I believe they find out they're not up to it. Isn't that the engagement where the guy has to handle the 50 cal with his hands and burns his hands really, really, really badly?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And the other thing that happens is the toughest off. They're holding out on the edge of a stream, and this is very, very serious. The Japanese are kind of almost outflanking them. They're shooting as fast as they can load and respond and fire. And they are absolutely hard pressed. The apparatus is compromised.
I think this is what, if I remember the timing of the show right, this is what Bazzoloni's actions that got him the Medal of Honor in this particular battle they're going on right now.
Isn't he just basically running ammo back and forth and having to fight his own hand-to-hand war?
Well, he's like a single-man army. The way that I've read and the way my relatives described, he was like a single-man army. He was running and getting ammo for the survivors. He was fighting guys like some guys who were a machine gunner. Be jumped by Jap. He'd jump in there and take them on in hand-to-hand while they were shooting the machine guns. And so we're talking
Hacksaw Ridge stuff.
One of his shoes wore out. He was running barefoot through half, and it was like multiple days. They didn't sleep or whatever. It was some crazy. Real life is always crazier than than fiction in some respects.
Yeah.
Someone's knocking at the door.
As you can hear, the reports of gunfire all over our show as we bring you right into the action. And at the first engagement, this machine gun gets a little bit compromised, and he has to kind of sling it over his own arm. And it's like having an iron on your arm, but if he doesn't keep firing, they're all going to die. So he just does what he has to do, and his arm is all messed up. It's functional, but he's just like burned and bloodied, and it looks like someone hit him with a waffle iron like 8 times. It's terrible. And then he invents the only thing you need to handle it is a coat hanger. Puts it through the venting cover over the muzzle, and uses it in a sweeping motion. And they send him back to train people, and seems like that was a really good idea based on his encounter with the enemy.
There's the next one, Jacob.
Okay, now that just looks like me. I didn't actually fight it in World War II. I did fight, but it was in Europe.
Wow. Well, that guy's forehead.
Okay, I wasn't on our side, but that's a different story.
And this is John. I believe John wanted to get back to the war after he became more of a pop propaganda piece.
And if Band of Brothers movie is Saving Private Ryan, which is more or less based on somewhat real events, then this TV show, this series movie, I'm trying to think what it would be.
If I recall correctly,
it's a companion to something.
Several of the 3 guys that they're focusing on, they wrote biographies about the 3 of them, and that was the core of what they pulled the materials for this. If I recall correctly.
As we got to like 75 years out from World War II, what happened was there was a wave of nostalgia, and it kind of went the way the war ended. Like first Europe, and then like it was like people remembered, oh my God, there was a war in Japan.
I'm trying to get past it, man. My arthritic hands aren't as
So Jacob, you looking forward to using that blurring tool later, huh?
Yeah.
It blocked everything, Jacob. Relax, you're safe.
At the 3340 mark, by the way. I want to make a note of that.
I'm watching you live. You didn't get blocked. You didn't get disrupted, Jacob.
Okay.
I forgot this was an HBO series, and they showed some nakedness in it.
Yes.
Can you imagine if Skinamax did this? What they? Oh my God. Oh. Yeah.
And at the end of the first episode, they kind of show you something right there in those last few scenes. It's a montage of like all these things that America has that Japan doesn't even come close to. Suspension bridges, coast-to-coast railroads, full utilization of resources, and the ability to draw on all these people.
They finally get off that island, and they
well, it was
get
what was
back
the name
on
of the
another
campaign?
island.
There was the name of the campaign. Henderson's. No. Was the campaign in Guadalcanal? Or was that the battle? The battle of Guadalcanal.
There's a couple of battles on Guadalcanal. They go because we go back and retake all those islands and use them as bases. In the Pacific, what we do is we take an island. It doesn't necessarily need anything but to be there. We build a base, we put an air base on that island, and then we start fighting our way towards the next island where we build another base. And then we can just kind of start ferrying in supplies, and you're establishing your supply line as you go.
Yeah.
And this was unheard of that you would have 3,000 mile. What is it, about 2,700 mile supply line, something like that, from San Francisco to Pearl Harbor. And you might notice the uniforms and stuff's just slightly different in the Pacific, although it is a different branch of the service. And this is at this point they run into some people who've been out there a little longer than them, and they're all insane. And we get that one crazy guy washing in the rain and screaming about hygiene. Isn't that guy in Full Metal Jacket?
I don't. I'd have to remember the dude's face.
I think it's the door gunner. I think it's the Get Some guy from Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
And if you like Vietnam movies, you'll like this movie because this is like a pretty brutal movie, and it's more in the spirit of a Nam kind of movie than any kind of World War II. It's kind of inglamorous. It's kind of filthy, and Whereas what we said, this guys in Band of Brothers, they're sort of wistful, but these guys are like, they're like, we're not going to make it.
That's ridiculous.
They're like, we'll probably like pave the way to win, but like this war is going to get won like 15 years down the road.
There's the next part, Jacob.
I think in the first episode, they run across some. I mean, they hadn't seen any Japanese for like a few days, and they run across their guys that are like tied up to a tree, and they've been tortured. And I mean, this show just very, very. It's not the full extent to how bad it was.
Yeah.
For these guys.
Well, even in some of John Wayne's films, I remember one of them was it Sans Iwo Jima, where they're on their firing line, hunkered down and dug in and all that, and they could hear a guy calling out for help, and the Duke is like, "You can't go out there; they're going to kill you. It's a trap. You have to let that guy suffer, basically, because they're letting him live and scream, so they're making him scream so they can lure you out there to kill you, So
yeah.
It wasn't flag football, right?
Nope.
Yeah, no. This is crazy. That guy that won all the medals and stuff has been sent back to sell war bonds.
Yeah.
That's a really good idea, though. Like, there's nothing worse for the nation's morale than like USA's official quarterback, killed. That's a worst possible outcome for your nation. Yep. And that's why once someone does something really incredible, what they do is they pull them out of combat and they send them back to sell war bonds, because this country can do that. We have more soldiers. It's not the Soviet Union where you stay in the line.
Well, and Sergeant York for World War I, when he became famous and got the Medal of Honor and all that, he was sent home to be a propaganda piece.
You can't have someone like that be killed. The only person I could think of who was sent back, and I remembered this series movie would be Flags of Our Fathers. This series movie would probably be Flags of Our Fathers. But we get 3 Pacific War movies in a row, starting with Thin Red Line, which isn't good.
There are always guys who go, like Basilone, he went back, he forced his way back in. Ridley Scott, Black Hawk Down, some of the guys there were, even though a lot of them got medals for what they did, they refused to leave the war because of their brotherhood and all that sort of stuff. Like there are some guys who always go back out there. That's just what their way is.
I think the deal was they had in every city they had to like cover up that Ira Hayes was going nuts because he had bad PTSD, and he was like, they were like springing him out of jail, and they're like, maybe we should just send him back. That's how the movie seems to portray it. Yeah. And these characters are still kind of naive, and we had never seen a World War II movie of this scope. Yeah, this looks incredible.
Beefed up landing craft with machine guns on them.
These are the ones that have the tracks. See how the water's shooting up behind them? They have 2 rows of tracks with metal fins that stick out.
So this was a development to protect the soldiers from those open-fronted death trap vehicles,
Yeah.
I think the Marine landers now actually have fully contained, like even protective over the top.
They didn't make the bad ones because they loved them. They made both at the same time, and they were cranking out the better ones as fast as they could. But the not so great ones, very easy to make.
Plus, they didn't really know better. To be honest, this type of these landings, like in the beaches in Normandy or here, you should have. We being backseat drivers or whatever you call it, was hindsight's always 2020. Like, yeah, you could have thought the making them into shooting alleys when the front door opens and the soldiers trapped in metal and can't get out and they just get gunned down. That seems like something someone should have thought of, right? But hindsight's always 2020. I mean, enough guys got killed. Like I said, they did studies on it that they got to protect the soldiers go into that environment. If I recall correctly, the Marine landing vehicles don't just stop at the beach now. They'll drive straight up and bust through barricades.
We basically have a hovercraft tank.
Yeah.
Have you seen it floats on a curtain of air?
They can even go a certain amount below the water now. I was reading something about them a couple of years ago. Like if they get if there's almost a seal, if they get submerged like 10 or 20 feet, they can keep going and get to the shore. Close to wave, like
I like
wave
the
is or
gunny in
whatever.
the gunny in these episodes.
We have some really cool, colorful sergeants, and we have they keep showing Chesty Puller as like their general, right? And he's like
Yeah.
kind of a notable World War II Marine.
Yeah.
Yeah, he shows up from time to time, and he's like a baseball manager. Like, hey, General, where you going? Like, Tokyo, come on, boys. He's just like, always smoking away at his pipe.
Yeah, my relatives who was in the Marines said they actually, Chesty Puller's myth was real. They actually, the Marines actually liked him. You know what I mean? He was a Marines Marine, so to speak. You know.
I don't think the Marines have any backseat generals outside of the supply. You know, I think in the Marine Corps, you know, you're right in there with your guys, like almost a German general. The crazy thing is we lose the least amount of generals of any army because we're the only army that believed that generals should command from the rear from a command post with organized maps and just direct artillery and resources. The German commanders are going right up to the front line and shooting with their guys and, like, you know, seat of the pants soldiering. And look, they just didn't have the resources for us to know if that would have worked long term. I think this is where we see the botched surrender.
The Japanese would poison the water too.
Yeah,
they were clever. Let's face it.
Well, our ancestors did that too. Like they would poison wells and castles if they knew they were going to fall and stuff like that. You know.
Oh yeah, let's face it. Every society has had bad people, and you know, when societies go to war, you know, two things happen. Like the very, very excellent people stand out, and the very, very dastardly people sort of have a field day.
Well, it's kind of funny. It's a stark contrast. Like we watched the Lawrence of Arabia talking about it. 4 days ago, Jacob? And I don't think you would, in a Bedouin culture, anyone ever poison wells. You know what I mean? Like that's a no.
They can't afford to.
Stop there, Matt. You get it. That's what that's the landing craft,
alligator type landing craft. Those. Yeah. Here's the thing: they have both kinds, but if you look at that one, think about the effort versus the wooden Higgins boat. You know what I mean? And just so people understand, the landing craft, like you see in Saving Private Ryan, and this is why Yogi Berra fights on both fronts in the war. The Coast Guard mans those a lot of the time, or the Navy. And what they did was they had to drop anchor as they went in the last final, however long the anchor chain was, 200 yards, whatever it might be. They had to drop anchor and run in the last 100 yards or so, and with the anchor trailing behind them. And what this did was, like, it lightened them up and they started surging forward, but also they would retract the anchor as they backed off the beach to increase their speed of escape. Because these things are like, they call them like landing ship troop or something, and they call them like large slow target. That's what the soldiers are calling them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm actually looking for a modern, like a modern vehicle, a landing vehicle. You know, I'm trying to find so we can just show what we're talking about.
The modern Marine Corps vehicle.
Here's one of them. Here's the hovercraft. Literally, I'll show it. It's a Navy hovercraft.
So this is SEAL team stuff.
Well, I mean, it's a similar type of vehicle. That's all. You know what I mean. This is it. Marines TV. Yeah. So this is Marines TV. This is a government website, so it's completely free. You know. So I'll go back to the beginning of it. So here's
our taxes pay for this.
Yeah.
We already own this.
Hovercraft, but it's like, oh, how armed and it's protected. You can't bomb into it. You know what I mean.
Well, we have. Here's the thing: the countermeasures have advanced at the same pace. Somebody with a wire-guided rocket can take this thing out.
You can drive even further protected vehicles, like right off of it. You know what I mean? Oh.
Right. The Marine Corps has one ship. It's the Iwo Jima.
I think
an aircraft carrier. It deploys these things.
Isn't this thing amphibious that they drove off of it as well, or is there a vehicle like that's amphibious? So
the Marines have their own aircraft carrier. I believe it's called the Iwo Jima, and it's designed a little different. And it opens up, and those like little monsters come out of it, and like it can deploy the troops much safer. But that's not the bulk. We don't have too many of those.
Yeah,
we couldn't fight a war right now. That's our most advanced landing craft that we would try to start mass producing. But if we had to get into I guess the word would be traditional conflict right now, we would just have to basically go with what we had. We're not going to, the better stuff's not going to get there till the middle of the war, which is what happens in this war.
Right.
Yeah.
And even in something like Vietnam, halfway through the war, the Americans switch over their weapon. The M16 is not around till like 66.
Actually, I found another one. We're supposed to look at this. Share screen. Put this in its own window. I think it's this one. I got another one. So this is a much larger vehicle. So I get to the shore.
Now you're seeing what happens. It's like a catamaran, and it's like a mothership tender to these assault craft. And we could take like the Hawaiian Islands or something with them, but we only have one of these. How many of these landing craft we have is something I couldn't tell.
And look how armored that thing is and protected. You know what I mean? There's a place.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: it's a resupply vessel. The wave of people who attack are now going to be helicopter borne. There's going to be a wave of attack helicopters followed by troop helicopters before those things ever get deployed. Those are day 2 now.
Right.
I think in our.
Oh yeah, they'll artillery and bomb the crap out of that. I'm sure it will be like what the soldiers had to go through on D-Day would never happen again. They would obliterate all of those emplacements that would, because it wasn't the defenses. They could get through those defenses like the barbed wire and the barriers. It was being shot at by those guys, those gigantic like the density of fire they were receiving from all those bunkers and machine gun emplacements. And while the soldiers were on the shore, there was German artillery landing on the shore from further back, and they would just blow all of that up now. Like there would be like planes destroying all of that. Naval artillery and missiles would pound that for days.
Well, the fact of the matter is that wasn't really an option, right? Because if we had done that, they would have known where we were going. And we spent about 2 years trying to convince them that we were attacking somewhere else. So where we went had far fewer.
Well, I'm saying to you, in the modern day, they would just drill that at every, like if they want to think they come from one of 5 places, they'll do that to all 5 places and just go in on the one that they wanted to see. You know what I mean? Like that's the methodology is overkill now. Like that, like preserve the soldier's life and overkill with the bombs. You know what I mean?
Sending 100,000 guys onto a beach in one day is definitely overkill too, though. I mean, 8,800 casualties in the first hour, and we're gonna keep going. That's definitely the definition of overkill. That was the most brutal day since the Battle of Gettysburg, and the American Army somehow holds up. But there's several things go wrong. There's weather that makes the airdrops ineffective of the paratroopers. The bombing from the air is ineffective because of weather, and the naval artillery overshoots also because of weather. And as the well-known story is, the Germans just happen to be staging war games, and we just happen to get pushed off course, and we landed at the worst place at the worst time. And we were always going to win that battle, but we might have gotten kicked off that beach.
Yeah.
Here's some of the larger landing craft that came later.
These are again day 2 vehicles. You would never want to deploy your soldiers off of that day 1. Day 1 is you put as many targets out there as you can. You flood the horizon with these Higgins boats, and you just make the enemy have to use everything they've got. And like I said, simply creating a great deal of targets and spreading them out. This is more day 2 stuff, but as you can see there, we're driving tanks and other vehicles right off of this landing craft vehicle, LCV, I believe. Roman, help me.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, my grandpa was the only guy in his company that went in on D-Day that survived World War II.
Well, my grandfather survived World War II, but he didn't fight in the Pacific, so.
Well, I mean, I'm just talking about the meat grinder effect that certain parts of World War II had, So. Okay, so it's
I guess the other thing I want to say real quick is every single one of these landing craft could have had its own dedicated fighter plane if we don't build the atomic bomb. That's how much money and faith we put in. Our war plan is audacious and highly technical. Really, really deeply technical.
Some of those shots at the end
of that there were the books.
Let's see if I can catch that again.
Let's see if I can catch this again.
Yeah. I mean, there aren't too many people alive who've witnessed something like this firsthand. It'll never happen again. As was said before, something like a Tomahawk missile strike is not going to have the problems that they had with Overlord.
Those were the books that I'm trying to freeze on that frame.
Every frame of painting, really, in this production, it's really well filmed.
A little further back.
Further back. It's after the guys' names. It's after the actors.
Which episode? There are 8 episodes, and we're in episode 2.5 here.
Yeah, I'll look them up later and just post them for you. You can post them in the description. Here's the next one, Jacob.
Is Tom Hanks affiliated with the Pacific production too, right? Whenever he does a movie, he sort of over focuses on that topic for the next 10 years. He made a bunch of space documentaries, which are good. And then when he does the World War II movie, he makes a bunch of World War II documentaries.
He's one of the execs for the whole Pacific Band of Brothers,
And in other great news, guys, Polar Express 2 in development.
Oh, that's what we all wanted.
Yeah, please don't change a thing. I wasn't creeped out at all by your strange movie.
Yeah.
No, what I want is a live action of Battlefield 5 or whatever with that purple haired cyborg chick with the robot hand who's using a samurai sword to cut tanks in half in World War One. That's what I want, man. I really want that. It's up, Jacob.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Oh, let me try again. I clicked it, but maybe it didn't take. There we go.
There we go.
I always like the name that some of these places have. Like the Humor Burgle sounds like some sort of cousin of the Smurfs or something.
Yeah.
Puleu. I believe that is a civilian airfield from before the war.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the guys is writing a girl back home and is like, the name of this place means death trap. I don't know what the name
there's
of
what's
this
his
place
face
is.
from if I catch it again. There he is, he's in the background. From what was that TV show that everyone but me loved? What about the hacker who was delusional? It was on USA. Him back there. It was he was a hacker, and it turned out he was delusional. It was all in his head or some crazy stuff like that.
Got me.
You'll know the name of it if I mention it. If we cover. I hated the show. He wound up playing Freddie Mercury too. That actor.
Yeah.
Here we see, I think this is where we see another engagement, and then they're going to botch surrendering in a way that makes people stop taking prisoners. And we see him double tapping people here, as the expression goes. They are now a little bit harder than they were in episode 1, and everybody's got that wistful stare.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point. Where you could try to take surrenders only so far, and then I'm not hearing some.
I mean, they stopped with the helping the injured Japanese soldiers because they were blowing themselves up, and then because we stopped doing that, they got civilians and strapped explosives on them and sent them into our lines.
Well, even in World War II, in the European campaign, I remember some of my relatives saying they felt bad for the regular German soldiers. There'd be one Nazi in there who wouldn't surrender, or would pretend to surrender and botch it up. You might have to kill all the guys.
Sure.
There's.
Sorry, I don't believe that. I think that they really liked Hilter, and I think they were really into what they were doing because they came so close to winning.
The German soldiers, they were just soldiers. They were conscripts for the most part, like anyone else. They were not. You know,
Yeah.
even a high level German command, those 48 plots we were talking about forcing to kill Krappler, quite a few of those were by the German military command. You know, so it's
I'd also point out the only word we have that these Nazis who had everything to gain by saying they tried to kill Hitler comes from those Yahtzees themselves. You know what I mean?
Oh, there's some
So it's kind of
like
like somebody who's an alcoholic, like telling you that, yeah, they definitely have stopped drinking this time. It's like, and we see the surrender, and what they do is they go to help the wounded Japanese soldiers, kind of beckoning them over, and they're like, they go over to try to help him, and they see the guy like pulls out the grenade and blows it off, and it's pretty brutal. We see, like, I guess we would call it a pink misting of about 3 Americans and that's Japanese guy, and they're like, well, that's it for prisoners for a while. And in reality, taking prisoners was very difficult in this campaign. I mean, did they take something like 8 or 28 at Iwo Jima, where there was something like 18,000 enemy or something insane like that?
Ridiculously low number, you know.
Letters from Iwo Jima, by the way.
That episode, the sledge there directed fire in on a building, and there were civilians in there, and I thought it was a very poignant scene where he goes in that building and there's an injured woman dying, and he just holds her hand until she dies. That was just a very gut wrenching, and I mean that happened a lot back then. You can't. I mean, it still happens, not to the extent because we can narrow it in, but it still happens.
It's up, Jacob.
It's very similar to the end of Full Metal Jacket, where they get the person that has been antagonizing them with the sniper fire, and then they like one of them decides to do something that would be called relatively compassionate.
This is when Basil only wants to go back. Yeah. So he's trying to get them to let him go back into the field, if I recall correctly, at this point.
Right.
Yeah, and this guy didn't wake up like a Superman. He was a human being like the rest of us. It was just like he was a soldier who listened to orders. He went back and he helped other people be much more prepared. He survives the first engagement. He understands a couple of innovative tactics, and he shows them how to do things a little better than he was able to do it. But then he's like, I've trained people who can now train other people, and I want to go back.
Speak for yourself there, Teague. All of us Italian Americans wake up as Supermen. We are powerful.
I'm part Italian. What are you talking about?
Yeah, so there's a part of you.
Get out of here, Paisan.
Part of you wakes up as Superman. Always remember that. Always have faith in your people, my friend.
Yeah, I still wake up. I mean, yes, part of me wakes up as Superman.
Yeah. I wake up and crunch steel on my teeth every day.
Yes.
I wake up and
Scotland
it's 2
forever.
and I have to pee because I'm so old.
I can't help. Every time I see soldiers on a beach scene, it goes back to that Light Horseman scene. Man, I can't help it now.
Oh yeah.
You know. Spoilers for real life, even though they were going to get married.
Okay, there's another scene here coming up, Matt.
I'm going to do a big jump.
Just skip like 10 minutes ahead. There we go.
I'm way jump.
The rule is 5 seconds.
Well, we're trying to avoid the adult content scene.
And there's only really 3 of those scenes, and I thought they were
suggest we've seen
unnecessary.
Most of this episode anyway. The worst one is in the last episode where our guy who's won all this all this acclaim, and they're still fighting what you would call a really filthy rat-like war, and that's the conversation where one of the guys, the guy who takes up the pipe smoking, and he starts moving up the ranks a little bit. He's about to go out onto the battlefield after the engagement, and he's going to take some gold teeth, and he's going to take some wedding rings, and he's going to take some watches from the bodies. And as they're having this conversation about how you shouldn't do it, the one character is throwing pebbles into the lobotomized skull, a radical lobotomy that had ended one of his Japanese opponents. And he's just plinking these pebbles into the guy's brain bucket was like, yeah, I thought this over. You probably shouldn't do that. You gotta sleep after the war. You know what I mean? You don't want to wake up remembering that. It's like, I see all the
that
guys
last episode was the episode where what's his name? The Italian guy gets killed. John Basilone gets killed.
Yeah.
And it's like
Iwo Jima.
First engagement back in Iwo Jima, he gets killed.
Yep.
Like right off.
I believe we lose as many on Iwo Jima as we did on D-Day. That's a much longer battle with a much smaller concentration of forces. But wasn't it something like 8,000 people killed on like a 3-mile island? So, wow, what was that place like?
Yeah,
not a place you really want to
be. There's one scene where Sledge is like, it's raining and wet and stuff, and he's kind of climbing up.
Like, look at the back. Could you imagine the amount of prep work they had to do to get those scenes to be like the amount of mud they had to make, and the amount of like World War II style junk they had to come up with, and all you know.
My guess is a lot of it was
there's a scene where Sledge is climbing up some hills and it's muddy and wet, and he slips and slides down into a foxhole that's full of water, and there's a dead body in it, and he's got that would have been horrific. Yeah. This really was a horrible conflict. And is this one also interwoven with real life testimony from living survivors like Band of Brothers? Or we don't? There we go. Yeah. These are the kind of things that people are self-deleting in a pretty heinous way. And now it's like every time you try to take a surrender and they use it as an opportunity to inflict more casualties, there's less and less chance that you're going to get to surrender next time. So that's what's going on, is that the stakes have been raised to shoot everything that moves. And when it's not moving, shoot it a few more times.
Yeah.
And if you're going to take a prisoner, your prisoners have to be able to strip and come out like with their hands on their head at this point in the war. And it was like only after you'd won. It's like, there's a few guys holed up over there. It's like, all right, let's see if we can get a prisoner too.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And as we can see, the absolutely fanatical resistance they're up against.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's
I would suggest that guy coming up behind him had no chance. He just wanted to take out an American.
Yeah. Fanatical, I mean, also driven by the fact that if they did surrender, they were told when they would go back home after the war, they'd be executed. You know what I mean?
I think they were told that we would cook and eat them too. I mean, they weren't exactly getting the.
Well, they were put in a no-win scenario. Like you either die in battle, or you come home and we execute you for failing to die in battle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a reason why 100% of all governments that tried this system failed, right?
Did you guys see Godzilla -1 yet?
Yes.
Not yet. No.
Bro, see it.
Okay, so slightly
good war movie. It's the weird thing about it. It's a good war movie.
Slightly spoilers for the main character. He's a kamikaze pilot who fails to die in battle, right? And I'm grossly oversimplifying here. Okay?
Which in reality, there were a lot of survivors that were kamikaze pilots.
Yeah. And well, the thing is, he, like many of them, though, he was mistreated by his own people for that because he was supposed to die in battle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's part of his story arc through the film. You know?
I think he should have had sex with that hot woman he lived with. I question that decision. But he had seen some stuff in this Godzilla movie. Godzilla is like, there's an environment where like there's a few Godzillas.
That guy gets home and his parents have turned his bedroom into a storeroom.
Yeah.
It's like we were kind of counting on you buying the farm, son. We rented out your room.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Your mother and I had plans for that $10,000 the government was going to give us. If you did, I mean, it's good to see you.
This is of course after the bulk of the war is over and the occupation is beginning, and they're going home.
Yeah, and we string up their war leaders too for being total dicks. Sorry, oops. That's not actually a curse.
Well, those that didn't commit seppuku or off each other, as it was, you know what I mean? Like there wasn't a lot of that to do in Japan versus Europe. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
a lot of German guys decided to take the easy way out, or whatever you want to call it.
I call it the most efficient way out. Saves us time and money.
I don't think that if you're a war criminal, you should be allowed to go out in your own terms. I think you should go out at the hands of the people who vanquished you. If you're a war criminal,
if I view it, if you can't be killed in battle, then and you can be efficiently self-eliminating and save money and time, because it does. I could care less about trials and whatever. I just want the dude dead. You know what I mean? I don't.
Yeah, this out of the soldiers they focus on in this, he's the only one that shows.
I'll see if I can play this whole bit without getting
him struggling back in civilian life.
Here we go.
So I'll try to pause this so we can see this whole little sequence here.
Yeah, this one gives us at war at home, right? Right after the war, we get after the war at home in this as something we don't really get in Band of Brothers.
I think they give us like. So I know initially they weren't telling us which of the soldiers talking versus the actor playing them. When it first started, they didn't tell us which was which, and they reveal it over time, right? Whereas here we don't get the. I don't believe the actor like real guy flashbacks in this one the way they're. Obviously, you can't with Basiloni, but so at the end, I think at the end they had to do this. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'll just say this PhD in biology, you would think that you would never want to see any living thing turned inside out again after his experience.
So this is one of the books with the old breed at Peleliu and Okinawa.
Published in 1981. So he held off on that.
Yeah. That was Lena Bazelon. Yeah. Yeah. Hey, they got a guy with the right jaw to play him. Look at that. Yeah, you see it?
Yeah, this is all modeled of kind of on the end of Gettysburg.
Something about this one, you don't get that invested with the character. I mean, you pretty much know the main three characters' names.
Yeah.
I mean, it jumps around so much that you don't really get invested.
He kind of looks like Chesty Puller.
Other guys. Yeah, he does.
They got a good likeness.
Yeah.
They did very well in the likeness department. Believability department, a little less so because they had to use a lot of CGI. There's no what I call war porn left over from this war anymore. There's no vehicles really. Like the limited amount of vehicles we have, the limited amount of leftover equipment, a lot of it's like scattered across the world. Like there are still probably some World War II planes flying in South America, literally still in the air. But for the most part, we're dealing with CGI stuff or mock-ups and recreations.
So there was you reminded me of a movie, Teague. There was it's one of the few comedies I enjoy. Like I'm not a big comedy person. It's called Tank with James Gardner, and he basically restored a Sherman tank. And the end of the film is him versus like a corrupt small town sheriff, and he uses Sherman tank to get this girl that the sheriff is human trafficking to safety. Yeah. So
and then him and Chrissy's sister, Jenny Lee Harrison, and his son C. Thomas Howell go on a wild rampage across like Pennsylvania or something insane like that. and the movie is completely freaking insane.
Yeah, but at the end, like, there's a giant tug of war between the corrupt sheriff and his minions and the people in the county next door who want to save him in the tank. And a biker gang comes and helps out with the bike and the big jump to put the cable on the tank. And then the tug of warring, where eventually they get like a bulldozer or something on the good guy's side and pull him across. So, it built like you're watching the film, you're having some laughs, and there's some small town sheriff bad, like being evil type of stuff. But when the tank thing happens, and you're like, oh, it just like it builds up to it perfectly. You know what I mean? And
the bad guy sheriff is Sephram Cochran. It's what's his name? James Cromwell. Yep. Big in the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the guy I was talking about was Malek, Freddie Mercury guy, and the TV show is called Mr. Robot. I was talking about. So.
Yeah.
On that one, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I've seen the thumbnail. Not gonna lie, I don't know anything about that one.
It's not. I thought I'd like it because I'm a computer guy. I like hacking movies if they're done well and all that. I was like, this is so boring.
You like 2010?
2010, like the sequel to 2001. It's 2010.
Yeah.
Slightly better than the first film. I'm more of a fan of the books that Clark wrote than the movies that they made versus them. So
they're deep. Yeah, they talk about unrelated. Yeah, those books are unrelated to those movies. 2010 is free on YouTube if anyone wants to check it out. If you have premium.
Yeah.
It's not really free if you have to pay for it, but you know what I mean, guys.
There are a lot of like legal and illegal free movies on YouTube. Like there's an immense amount of stuff on there.
Yeah. Some of them are inverted or backwards.
Usually they push the speed by like 20%.
Do I have?
There was a copy of Tank on YouTube for a while, and it took maybe like a half an hour to realize that they had sped it up because I was like, why does James Garner sound like Wilma Flintstone? I would say I like support your local sheriff and support your local gunfighter better.
Yeah,
they were good. I mean, James Garner is good in a lot of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, James was getting long in the tooth on this one. I mean, he goes on to keep doing movies, but he couldn't do that role. He was probably 55 or something, and he's like, that movie is basically it's falling down. If you've ever seen that, he's like his military career is over. This career that he chose, like he got his 30 years out of it. He has some kind of meltdown. His wife is the wife from the Rodney Dangerfield movie where he hangs out doing cocaine with Joe Pesci the whole film. What the hell was it called? Easy Money? It's the wife from Easy Money. And it has dialogue like, we want to talk to you about that tank with the prostitute. And she goes, that's my husband and son in that tank with that prostitute. That's in that movie. So Tank... James Garner needed some money or something. He got in trouble gambling on baseball.
Yeah. I think James Garner is the biggest name actor who did a movie with Bruce Lee.
There would have been more, right? How long does Bruce Lee live?
He died early, obviously, but like I said, I think he's the biggest name actor of any of the films. Yeah. I'm trying to
Didn't Wilt Chamberlain have sex with 20,000 women?
He claimed. I mean,
Didn't he? Or is that isn't he in a Bruce Lee movie, or is that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, great actor from the movie Airplane.
I don't know if I can go that far, but okay.
Which is a story of World War II veterans.
Yeah. So Shirley Jones, I got the tank credits up now. So Shirley Jones was LaDonna Carey, which is his wife. C. Thomas Howell.
It's not the chick I thought it was.
Yeah. C. Thomas Howell. Who was
from Gettysburg Sarah. And The Outsider.
Jenny Lee Harrison was Sarah.
It's Jenny Lee Harrison. It's Chrissy's first replacement. It's not Priscilla Barnes.
Yeah.
It's not. It's the first person to replace Suzanne Summers. It's Jenny Lee Harrison, and she's supposed to be Chrissy's cousin or something, and I don't remember what her name was.
Yeah. Candy?
No, Cindy.
There you go.
I think it was Cindy. Not positive.
I mean, maybe because I thought of her as Candy, so to speak. But yeah, I think I was like 10 or 11 and in early bloom of puberty when Street Company was on.
I'm gonna have to throw it to Moonlighting as the wow, I'm old enough to be really hot and bothered by this hot blonde lady.
Excuse me. Yeah. Is she alive? Jenny Lee Harrison. Is she alive?
Yeah, she still is. It's Suzanne Summers who passed away.
Yeah, you always have to ask now, like, is this person alive or dead? You know what I mean? It's like
Three's Company, a lot of people aren't with us anymore.
Yeah. Well, John Ritter died very young and tragically. He just started doing a dramedy show called Hooper. I was a big fan of John Ritter. He did a Hooper Man, which is a really good dramedy, and he died like in the middle of like filming the second season or something like that. You know, he did a bunch of good.
She looks. By the way, Jenny Lee Harrison doesn't look too bad for a 65-year-old woman. I mean, I think I got a shot now.
There you go. C. Thomas Howell. He was in Red Dawn, one of my favorite movies, like one of my top 25 favorite movies of all time.
At Gettysburg.
Yeah.
His performance in Gettysburg is great. Have you seen Gettysburg?
Yes, and I'll take Red Dawn, man. Red Dawn just appeals to me at a soul level.
Yeah, I've got the Masters of the Air trailer up if you want to watch that.
Sure.
Now we're going to take some crazy chances, everybody. This is when we say, please hit the like and follow buttons for my friends and I. So as we get kicked off the air or not for trying this one,
follow us on.
Can get maximum impact. And hey, you can
follow us on our other social media so you can stay in contact when we get taken out. So
yeah.
I tell everyone follow me on Twitter now because that's the best way to make sure when YouTube ultimately unsubscribes you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna play little snippets of it, not the whole thing. But look at that.
I wonder if we play it upside down, would YouTube catch it? You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they would.
You know what else I could do? I have a way to do this, especially on the computer I'm building is powerful enough. I'm going to try exporting like a movie to PowerPoint, like as a series of slides, not as a playable movie. And then I'm going to try playing it back as a PowerPoint presentation and see if YouTube can flag that. Because it's not playing the movie, you know?
Why not just use the arrow key and go 5 seconds at a time?
I'm just curious. I'm just curious about the algorithm. You know what I mean? Like what it catches and doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you talked about, say, this scene for like a minute and then hit the forward key like 4 or 5 times to go ahead like 20 seconds, you know what I mean? You would not get in trouble.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I dissect a Trek show now.
Well, I basically do what I did with the Pacific through all of my videos now. Sometimes I'll get a copyright notice, but then that's usually someone saying you're allowed to. They're letting you use it because it's promotional or whatever.
Here's the thing: when you ultimately monetize and they recheck out your stuff, they might be like, no.
I don't ever really plan on monetizing through YouTube.
I
mean, at most, if I ever monetize, I do through locals and like subscribe. So I don't want to give Google a cut of any money I ever get. I won't do it.
Well, everybody, my opinion is, if you want, go to my channel, subscribe, and get a membership. I feel differently about that one, but okay, that's cool.
If I could cut Google out of my life the way I've cut Microsoft out of my life, I would do it.
Yeah, me too. The best thing I ever did.
Some of these shots here. That looks pretty good for a CGI.
This is very well rendered CGI, and the planes are at 3 different altitudes, and it's a fairly realistic depiction of like a combat box formation as they went in. This was they thought that these planes were going to be able to defend themselves. Ultimately, they pretty much couldn't. But there's something to be said for once they figured out to put these planes in like rectangular, box-like or rectangular formations at varying heights at varying places. Each plane had something insane like 16 machine guns on it. So if we have like 4 or 5 planes together, think of how many machine guns that is, and we're just sweeping the air with lead. Now the problem with that is you could start hitting each other, and as the war develops and we go further and further in, we start to develop more and more innovative strategies. And Star Trek's Gene Roddenberry was part of the air war in the Pacific. Wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Wait, was that a missile? Did
I
they
think
have
it was a kamikaze?
missiles?
I think it was a kamikaze or one of those. They had one-man rockets. That may be what it is. Both the Germans and the Japanese, or the Japanese, I do not think we're able to use them against our bombers. Is this a Pacific campaign or an Atlantic campaign? It looks like
This
Pacific.
is Europe.
It's Europe?
Over Europe, yeah.
You know what this scene needs? A purple-haired chick with a robot hand jumping from plane to plane, taking them out in hand-to-hand combat.
Yes, that would make it better.
If we could cut to every once in a while Rosario Dawson impassively flying the plane with what's her name, Katie Sackhoff next to her, then that would complete and make it like a Disney film. Sure, that would work.
Or the green girl from Ahsoka,
Hera,
flying the plane. Yeah.
Ahsoka, fun stuff. Oh boy, is Star Wars ever dead? Can you imagine what it's gonna be like telling people in like 5 or 6 more years, people who are like 11 or 12 now, when they're like 17 or something? It's like, why do you like the Star Wars thing? It's retarded. It's like, well, it was once really good. There's no way that bullshit was good. And then it's like you try to show them, and they're like,
these German planes were pretty nasty.
FW-109s.
Yeah, with the cannon in the nose.
Well, the Germans had superior technology.
Yeah,
yes
they
and no.
They did.
Yes and no. The application of their superior technology was overseen by a complete lunatic. If you have to go to a war this intense, you got to hope that your enemy's war leader is as incompetent as Hitler. Hitler was the absolute worst war leader of all. I mean, look how much he loses. His faction almost wins. He was one phone call away from negotiating an end to that war.
And it looks like they do have the Tuskegee Airmen in this too.
It was a significant moment in history, and they're significant.
Maybe
they were very
well. Maybe they'll be the Tuskegee trans airmen.
Let's
remember
that the Tuskegee Airmen were all American heroes, and that's a big difference. But I don't want to be part of cross-associating those two groups. The Tuskegee Airmen, aspirational figures and heroes to many, including myself. And we're pretty sure that we're all men, right? Which Tuskegee Airmen movie do you like better, the one with Theo Huxtable or Red Tails? The Theo Huxtable Lawrence Fishburne one is a better movie.
Red Tails was
George Lucas being George Lucas.
Yes.
The guy who only drank because they needed a guy to drink so he could be a drunk. It was that
right.
Simplistic. The guy who was hung up on chicks because they needed a guy who was hung up on chicks so they could have a guy get a chick. The guy who was obsessed with fighting and destroying things was obsessed with fighting and destroying things because they needed a guy who did that. And it's just, the movie's not much of a story, but it's really visually great. Watch Red Tails because of the attack. And
I thought it was.
The attack on the destroyer is absolutely incredible. I don't know how technically possible it is to destroy a German destroyer with 50 caliber machine guns, but hey, who knows? He was shooting straight down at it. He might have gotten the boiler. I guess the one thing to note here is every Air Force aimed their machine guns straight ahead except at us. We aimed them to overlap and converge in front of the plane. We just had the impression that it would be like firing a huge shotgun off both wings over and over.
Right.
I bet you there's World War II gun cam right here on YouTube. That's the World War II. A lot of firsts. They put cameras into the planes, and when you pull the trigger on your machine gun, an actual film camera turns on to see what happens, so they can apportion the damage, and they want to know exactly how many of the enemy they got.
Yeah, one of the Tuskegee Airmen actually took out one of their jet fighters.
John Glenn also got the jet.
By that time, they were all inexperienced pilots because all the good ones have been killed.
There's no experienced jet pilots, but yes, point well taken. John Glenn gets a jet. I think he got one of the ones that was. Didn't they have one kind that would run out of fuel and then kind of glide to a landing? He got it while I was gliding in, so it wasn't under jet flight when he got it, but he gets one too.
Forget what those are called.
ME 6.
Yeah, something like that.
They only really have two. Anything else they had was a basically they had some rocket style stuff. Junkers Ju-287 was the multi-engine bomber. The Horton Ho 229 was the fighter bomber jet powered flying wing. The Heinkel HE-280 was the first jet fighter to fly, but they canceled it. And the HE-178 is their first. And then there's like 25 or so more. So they had a lot of different kinds, but yeah, maybe something focused on something more capable would have worked for them.
Yeah. I see photographs like this, and I'm like, get the guy out of the way. I want to see the airplane. Come on.
Exactly. You know what? Where I live and where Matt lives, we could easily go to Reading, PA has a D-Day reenactment war show every year where they have a like static line jump and all this other stuff, and you can take a flight in a B-17. It's pretty cool.
So there's who we have behind this show here.
It's the living members of the Who, ladies and gentlemen. That's Pete Townsend in the middle. So we got Mr. Happiness, Tom Hanks, just a joy on Twitter. Steven Spielberg, who does not sound anything like Sylvester Puttycat. And who's that on the far right?
Oh,
Gary Goetzman.
Yeah.
Getzman.
Yeah, Getzman. Sorry.
So these are our Masters of the Air people. Did Tom Hanks get another facelift, or is this left over from a long? Wow, he got a facelift. Look at Tom Hanks.
He did.
Look at him. I got to enlarge this so I can see more. That's disturbing.
He wants to keep his prune-like features as he gets older.
Yeah, right.
He didn't get a radical one, but look at his eyes.
Yeah.
Botox. And Steven's just like, I was never good looking, so I'm just going to keep rolling with it, be average looking until I die.
Yes.
Master of the Air looks like it could be pretty cool.
What is that dude wearing?
He's a freak with that outfit, man. Unless there's some kind of good story behind it.
Looks like he's going to a 1970s disco.
Karate expert.
He does look like he's ready to go into Studio 54. Watch this thing come on and him be the character that we're all like, that guy was did an amazing job, and then we see him, he's like hanging out, like acting like Ezra Miller.
Yeah.
Like, he looks pretty badass here.
Wow, is that a shot from the show?
I don't know, but it looked kind of real.
Good.
And this is, you can see this was one of the problems when they flew at really high altitude above above the anti-aircraft fire, they had these contrails, so like the attacking fighter craft knew exactly where they were.
Yeah, right.
And these things stayed for like 4 or 5 minutes. They would, be at the speed these planes are going, perhaps 10 miles long. Not crazy to say.
Ooh.
That looks pretty badass.
Somewhere, yeah, it does. I read somewhere that the kamikazes had a better survival rate than bomber crews.
If you're talking our bomber crews, we lose like almost all the bomber type planes that go out at Midway. So there's that. Like we launch one fruitless attack after another, and basically that battle goes the same way as Overlord. Our plan gets messed up, but we create so much confusion and keep coming back at them over and over to the point that the Japanese were no longer able to anticipate what was going on, and they were just frustrated, and we paralyzed them because they keep changing the munitions on their planes. And then finally, what was supposed to be one huge coordinated airstrike had turned into like 4 hours of nonstop attacks by small groups of planes, just harassing style. And the final group of planes got there in sufficient force and had driven enough of the combat air patrols over the carriers that they were able to do like a successful dive bombing run. And I believe that's where we get the 2 carriers, the Soryu and the Shikaku. I don't know. Dude, they were used against Pearl Harbor, so people were pretty happy about that one. And I guess one thing we should remember is we didn't have any ability to retaliate or try to do anything successful for the first 20 weeks of this Pacific conflict. So the Doolittle raid was our first big strike back, and it's not big. It's just to show we can do it. That was like slashing their tires and keying their car. It's like we can still do stuff,
Look at the plane behind him to all beat up like that.
It's dubious reality, though. It doesn't look to me like they created and burned up a good prop so you could stand there. No, it looks like the volume, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. A little bit.
It looks a little volumey. That could still be the photographer wasn't set up for this and was taking still shots because, a lot of times during these productions, you'll have a still photographer there. And he might just have had the wrong depth of field or something. But it looks to me like that is possibly green screen or something.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
But yeah, you can see, and this, as you said, this is Europe. They're not exactly having the easiest time. Now, we would like rotate people out of combat when they'd start going crazy, and we'd give them shrinks, and we'd give them pills, and we'd give them a vacation before we sent them back. The British just labeled you a coward and like put you in the infantry.
Yeah.
If you hesitated even once.
Wow,
that guy on the right looked so much like Joe Strummer, it wasn't even funny. Look, it's Joe Strummer from The Clash. Oh, I live by the river. Am I right?
Yeah.
Holy smoke.
Kind of looks like it.
So not only a great guitar player, but an intrepid airman.
Yeah. Does he have a mullet on underneath that hat? I wonder.
He's one person I'm really glad I got to see perform before he died. Jerk off. Mick Jones wouldn't take the stage. It would have been a real Clash reunion.
Yeah, the Tuskegee Airmen actually had a older version of the P-51.
Right, they get the first ones.
Yeah, they wound up being the top or the most highly decorated fighter pilots of the war.
Here's the thing: when they get there,
at least in Europe, I think.
At least in Europe, because in the Pacific we don't have things like mission caps. In Europe, after 50 missions or something, you go home. At the beginning of the war, it was like 25 successful missions, because they were sometimes losing 10 to 15% per raid, sometimes more. Like 10% was a day at the office, And if you're losing 10% of 100 of these planes, that's 10 of these planes. That's 100 of your comrades who are not there the next day.
Yeah.
Maybe some of them make it out.
How many?
You're never going to know.
Are there like 10 guys on each plane, right? Something like that?
rough estimate, because we have different planes, different crew complements, and as we cycle through the war, there are. But I would say like 7 is about right, and 10 is in like your most hefty planes, because we have what, 2 pilots, a bombardier who flies the plane on the bombing run. We have 2 waist gunners. Are we up to 5 already? A top gunner, a bottom gunner. That's 7, and possibly by the end of the war, on some planes, a tail gunner and a radio operator who also did navigation.
Right.
So,
and a
that's
waist
like
gunner.
about
We had
9
a
guys.
waist gunner too.
Yeah, two of those, one on either side. That's
right.
If you ever played Microsoft Flight Simulator, they had like a World War II one where you could fly like various World War II planes.
Mm-hmm.
And when you'd get attacked by like the enemy, like all you could do is like hit the space key, pause it, cycle around the weapons, and just start blasting away and be like, wow, if I could only be in 2 places at once, I could fire 2 of these 50 calibers at this thing and knock it down. But these things were not that successful right away, and we have to really start beating up on the enemy. And there we have what looks like the Flying Tigers, which would mean that's supposed to be an Indian, I believe they're called, or a buffalo. Hard to say.
Yeah. Is that the new Doctor Who?
That's Scooty.
Yep.
Oh God. They're rearranging the deck chairs, guys. It's going to be fine. They fired his companion. They didn't fire the writer. They fired the Doctor's companion.
Well, supposedly he's quitting at the end of the 2nd season anyway.
Doctor Who it was a cool franchise until when it ended a few years ago, huh?
There was a very wisp of a rumor
that
even the actor who Scooty was like, "This is too far woke. My career, it's going to hurt my career, not help it." So that's why he's quitting.
He got a phone call from this guy, John Boyega. He's like, "Let me tell you something, mate. Oh, don't let him Disney Plus you."
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyone think the Ray movie's happening? This movie's happening. Is the Ray movie happening? I say no.
I doubt it. As long as Kathleen Kennedy has power, that movie is going to get funded. Whether or not it gets released.
$13 million for Daisy Ridley. $13 million. I'm sorry, but what's her successful movie?
Yeah, don't know.
You know, this is one thing that you wouldn't expect from our military, and I don't think other militaries do it, but like we start letting our, like in the Air Corps, it's so stressful and such a like a mental drain to do it that like they're turning a blind eye to people getting like real wasted when on downtime, and they're letting them do stuff like paint intimidating crazy shit on their planes and names on their plane. If you ever see pictures from George Bush the father, he like really liked war. He was like very hands-on about it. Like he was the youngest pilot in the U.S. Navy in World War II, I believe, when he went in, and he was in plenty of combat, and he got shot down like 3 times in bombers. So speaks to what you were saying before. But if you ever see him, there's a famous picture of him in front of his plane, and the plane is like done up with all this devil stuff. And it's like, yeah, I heard that the Japanese feared the devil, so I painted my plane up like one.
Yeah.
He was interesting. I'll give him that.
Oh God, there was another Light Horseman scene.
Yeah.
I would like to see this play out instead of just a slide. Like it looks a little bit that effect is pretty ambitious. And this is looks almost like an Agent Orange drop over Nam, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Like then we had to take away the jungle.
These are Alex Jones chemtrails from World War II. World War II era chemtrails.
Well, these are condensation trails.
They turned the German frogs gay, and they turned the Japanese frogs gay too.
That's why I call him Alejandro Jonez. I have this funny feeling that YouTube doesn't like his name.
Yeah.
What's the point of not cursing if we talk about Alejandro Jonez openly? Welcome to Euphemism Tube, kids.
He's appearing on enough shows on YouTube that I'm sure they're happy making money off of him.
Yes. Well, guys, that was good discussion there of the Pacific. I look forward to the Masters of the Air. I hope Hope it'll be a good one. Hope there's no wokey stuff in it. So, what are y'all's thoughts on just the trailer? Or
It looks
good. What are your predictions of it?
I want to say because of the team that's doing it, that it could be really good, right? Although 2 of the 3 of them have gone woke, so we don't know. But on the other hand, what's against it is, again, 2 or 3 of them have gone woke, and it's on Apple TV, so we got to see. Yeah. I mean, you can always hope. You have to have hope, right?
Yeah. I'm optimistic about it, but our optimisms for shows have not been good lately.
if it's woke and sucks, we'll always have Reacher,
Yeah, right. And we'll always have Band of Brothers, which I think is the better of these 2, even though it might be a little dramatized a little bit, maybe.
I think
they're making a new band. They're making a new Band of Brothers about the Jonas Brothers. I mean, the Hanson Brothers band from the 90s. So we'll find out how that goes.
Oh, yeah.
Come on. Somebody out there had the Hanson record or CD. See, when I think of the Hanson Brothers, I think of the guys from Slapshot. So it's kind of different.
Come on. You were singing Bop.
Yeah.
Bop, yes. Bop. Well, thank you.
Does anyone besides me have seen Slapshot?
Of course. I've seen that movie at least 15 times. Paul Dubin is the coach of a hockey team, and
yes.
Pretty boy star, is it Ryan O'Neal maybe?
Yeah.
And of all people, Lindsay Krause is the hot chick in it, and she's pretty hot. It was surprising because if you see her in like something like The Witness or with Demi Moore, she's like looks very severe and different, or even House of Games, which is a great movie.
Yeah, it is.
So, Master of Air, hope. You must have hope.
Yes.
Let's have a positive outlook, right? These people. It's about a winning team, right? It's the 1996 Yankees. They win their conflict, so we got that going for us. They're going to win. The chances of it being woke are pretty low because even if they do something like go back to the home front, if it's realistic, women were working in the defense industry and helping build these planes and working like double shifts in factories, and it was a real thing. And I'm pretty sure my grandmother was one of them. During the war, there were no cars made for civilians. Ford and GM and Chrysler and Tucker and everyone else made tanks and planes. Long Island had a robust air power community. Only way to put it. Curtis Martin and all these other people were there. Most of our air defense industry was on Long Island, development and research. Fairchild, Grumman. I think Boeing was always Seattle, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, got anything to plug, Matt?
Okay, my Reachers season 2 episode that dropped an hour before the show. Tomorrow morning, cool. I have a review of a movie called One More Shot, which is a sequel to a movie I did not know existed. It's like a John Wick style action movie starring Scott Adkins. It was actually pretty good. That's why I dropped a review for it. And now I want to go back and watching the first one, and reviewing that probably in a couple of days. So reverse order, right? Got my Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time show, Friday Fandemonium. Every week I got next time I'll be on your show, Jacob. I think it's next Saturday, right? And then that one yeah. What is next Saturday?
Yep, the Reacher.
It's between next Friday and next Sunday.
Yeah.
Is it the day before the Super Bowl? or have we gotten that far yet? I don't know. I
I
know the Ravens won, so I've got some money coming my way.
I am so over the
Like
NFL. Since they gone woke, I only watch my team, the Giants, and only when they're good. So,
I would say that
I haven't watched NFL in years.
Well, it's a conspiracy between Roger Goodell and people like Joe's Atmosphere. You know who you are, Joe. And what they do is every day, I have taken a Disney approach to being a Jets fan. Have you noticed the Jets only lose when everyone predicts they're going to lose?
So
it's review bombing. It's review bombing. Yeah, no, it's review bombing. If people predicted the Jets would win, they would win. And when they kick it and they try to kick a field goal, if it goes wide, we got to think about how that play was called by the people in the booth. You know what I mean? It's like if they had wanted that to be, wouldn't it have made everyone a lot happier if they simply said it was good? You know what I mean? All those Jet fans. So I think that, from a Disney point of view here, what we need is new announcers, and we need to really educate our fans to be less uncomfortable with strong women and to get the Yahtzees out of the stadium. And next year, the Jets should go all the way to the Super Bowl.
And next week, Jacob and I on Thursday will be on Roman's show reviewing 12 Monkeys. Those funky monkeys.
Yes.
That's one of the most confusing time travel movies of all because it breaks so many rules. Is it a closed loop? It breaks the rule of every time you go back, you change everything that comes after with a massive butterfly effect because they keep going back to 1914 over and over. One of the most problematic and weird time travel movies. It kind of proves that you just have to have immersive time travel, not good time travel, for lack of a better term.
Right.
Think about Terminator. He just appears in a ball of fire, right? He just appears in a ball of fire. No one walked out of the movie. You know what I mean? It's like your time travel, as long as you get it out of the way and just go forward with your story.
Yeah.
When your story is only time travel, you start to get into a real rut.
Yes.
And the best example is Star Trek Generations. Absolutely, cell phones and self-destructs a lot of Star Trek by constructing an inescapable trap for our pal Captain Kirk and our former friend, the robot Picard. They can't get out of the Nexus based on the rules that are laid out about the Nexus.
Yeah, they're immortal and in paradise, basically. Right. So,
That's another problem is that now that we can create these soon-type robots, that means that we can have infinite re-uploads of Captain Picard and Captain Kirk.
Well, infinite copies of them because the real them are still in the Nexus.
Except that didn't happen.
But make sure it's a copy of their. It's a copy of their old body.
Well, it did happen to Guinan. So we anyone who goes into Nexus is copied out. Is like the way they explained it in the movie. Anyone who goes into that thing, what emerges a copy of them.
An echo. But the thing is this. The echo of Guinan is fully functional, remembers everything, and can do all the stuff we see her do up until the point that movie comes out and beyond. So that echo.
She's some vague, nebulous Star Trek. We're going to evolve the energy beings at the board and kill us powers. You know what I mean? Type of thing. Yeah.
I don't know why the Q is afraid of her. There's no evidence she's anything but a human. I'd say this about Star Trek Generations. Guinan says to Picard that you can't get to the Nexus on a ship in her cabin, not in the Nexus, on the Enterprise. How did Guinan's echo get into the Nexus? On a ship.
When she caught up in a ray or something something.
Her ship flew into it. The ship she was on flew into it, and that's how she got in. So the person who's there because they got there on a ship says you definitely can't get there on a ship. So that's.
I dislike all the Star Trek movies after 6. So.
Well, think about this. The next thing that happens is he says everything I see here when he talks to her again in the Nexus. He sees his and we go unnecessarily new Trek level grim in Generations, right? We start out by deleting Picard's family in a fire. No fire suppression in the 24th century. None.
Nope.
Man, too cheap to put a freaking fire extinguisher in a house full of people. Robert was never that smart. But anyway, we give him unnecessary pain at the beginning of the movie. It's now become Picard and his weird friends. It's not a true ensemble cast. William Shatner gets there in a ship. Guinan gets there in a ship. Guinan says, you can't leave. Why? Because you're here. How come you're there? Because I'm not here. How are you here? Because I'm here. And he's like,
who's on first?
This is what I. And then it's like, this is, this is not the life this is the life I wanted, not the life I have. And she's like, that's right. It's what you wanted. And he's like, what do you mean?
Sure,
he's like,
right.
whatever you want. She says to him, whatever you want to feel, whatever you want to think, however, whatever situation, whatever girlfriend, whatever you want back, you can just have it here. Just want, all you have to do is want it enough. Right. And he's like, no, that's
Right.
got to be poppycock. I'm going to go find James Kirk and leave the Nexus. She just told him whatever he thinks he wants to do, he's going to think he does it. So therefore, from the point he enters the Nexus on, Star Trek is an unreliable narrator to herself, and the other movies didn't happen, and that doesn't negate the show Enterprise, because the things from the Battle of First Contact that we see in Enterprise do not match the movie.
Well, luckily the last
it's
episode
actually proof the movie didn't happen.
Luckily, the last episode of Enterprise completely erases the show. So,
are you talking about the one we don't count with Jonathan Frakes?
It's the whole of Enterprise is just a holodeck experiment.
That's not true. What happens is we get a wraparound TNG story with 3 TNG cast members who don't look anything like they used to. They look more like they do now.
Yeah.
Anything that makes the events of Enterprise go away, it makes me happy. So.
Enterprise is a good show, better than Voyager or Deep Space Nine.
I enjoyed parts of Enterprise. The whole Xindi War was good, I thought.
The only thing there's two things that didn't work for me. The temporal Cold War, that was boring. Okay. That was boring. And also the idea that Vulcans didn't do mind melds until up until then it was considered improper and gross. And then 100 years later, so less than a Vulcan's lifetime, all of them are doing it. Like Spock, everyone's doing it. And they didn't know that they were going to pull that plot thread. So I just recently rewatched the pilot. She mind melds with Archer while he's out cold. She goes inside his head and sees his childhood to Paul. So
yeah,
that is the biggest problem with Enterprises. Anytime they touch the Vulcans, it doesn't work. But aside from that, just the Paul and stuff, that's a good show.
Is the episode Similitude, which is the most disgusting episode of Star Trek I've ever seen.
Help me out.
The one where they were making a clone trip that was fully sapient, and we're going to execute him to save the real trip.
That was weird.
It's disgusting.
Well,
it's like
T,
at that
what
point,
do you?
They're way out there over their skis, but yeah, there's a few Enterprise episodes we'd like to forget, but not as many as like Voyager or Deep Space Nine. What am I doing? I'm going to be highly infectious for a couple of days. My eyes feel like 2 hot coals. Everybody, my links in the chat, but I'll drop. You can see it up there. Hi, DJ Ronnie G. It's nice to see you, and hello, OT. And I want to thank everyone for being here and indulging our, discussion of World War II in the Pacific on film and the coming Masters of the Air, which looks to be pretty promising. They've got history to guide them. So, if they lock themselves in, even someone as unreliable as Roland Emmerich has made a good movie when he locks himself into the historical time frame. If you want to like or follow my channel, it's in the chat. It would be great if you did. I know some of you already do. Love you all. Thanks. And we'll see how I feel tomorrow. But I got the coof.
All right. OT, yes, it is. This is a weekly show. So next week we'll be talking about the Reacher series. Well, Tuesday we'll be talking about the movie To Catch a Thief, Alfred Hitchcock. Good movie. And then I will be on Roman's show, talking 12 Monkeys. And then next week we'll be going over the Reacher series. So that's all I got. Thanks to the chat.
Rarest of all things, a Hitchcock movie with a leading lady who can pretty much act.
Yes.
The birds. Tippi Hedren is just, what is she doing?
Well, thanks to the chat for chilling with us, and Matt,
you guys are awesome
for being on. Teague, thanks for jumping in there. Kind of short notice there. Thank you.
I love talking about history, and the Pacific was a great show. I wish I had better recall of it, but as far as the chain of events in the war, I guess the one thing I'd say to everybody is remember this: we took some crazy, daring chances at the beginning of the war, putting something like 20% of all the money we spent on it into those bombs. We built 3 completely different factories and made 3 completely different kinds of bombs, and because we didn't know which one would work. Turned out they all did, but that's another story.
I mean, you drop something that goes boom, it's going to go boom.
History is great because it's his story. No bloody women to mess it up.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for talking about the show, and we'll see everybody next time. Have a good week, everybody.
Take it easy, guys.